Number 9. The Deceit of a Woman. On August 14, 2022, a 22-year-old Florida student named Adam Simji tragically lost his life in Talladega National Forest in East Alabama during a road trip. He was with his girlfriend, 20-year-old Michaela Paulus. Things went down when they came across Yasmin Haider, who appeared to be a stranded motorist in need of help. The couple stopped to help her as she claimed her car had broken down. Simji and Paulus, who were both students, had been exploring the Alabama wilderness before returning to the University of Central Florida in Orlando for an upcoming school year. They both spent about an hour trying to help Ida with her car, but they realized that the vehicle would not start. Simji had recently purchased a charged battery pack, which they hoped could help her. Unexpectedly, Haider pulled out a gun and forced Simji and Paulus into the nearby woods. Haider then demanded that the couple surrender their cell phones and provide their banking details. Fearing for their safety, Simji tried to defend himself and his girlfriend by pulling out his own gun. During the confrontation, Simji was caught in the crossfire and suffered a fatal gunshot wound. Despite struggling with poor phone service, Paulus dialed 911 and attempted CPR on Simji, using her shirt to control his bleeding. During the chaos, Haider pleaded with Paulus for mercy, mentioning that she had a child and that the situation had not gone as planned. While awaiting the arrival of law enforcement for about 30 minutes, Paulus conveyed to Haider that they would have helped her with food and money, and she did not have to resort to violence. Simji was pronounced dead at the scene. Haider, wounded and injured, was eventually taken into custody and transported from a hospital to jail after surgery. Further investigation led the police to discover a group living off the grid near the site of the incident. 36-year-old Crystal Diane Pinkins was found there, and her 5-year-old son approached officers with a loaded shotgun. Pinkins was arrested for her involvement in the robbery, and her son was taken into protective custody. Both Haider and Pinkins face charges of murder, kidnapping, and robbery. Since then, the details of the case have become restricted because of a court order issued by a Clay County judge. The judge cited concerns about potential prejudice in the trial, which might arise from unrestricted media coverage and discussions about the case. As of the available information, it's unclear if Haider or Pincus, who had an address in Memphis, Tennessee, had legal representation. No details of their sentencing are available so far. Number 8. A bad coincidence. On March 14, 2015, a young university graduate lost her life because of a falling icicle. 20-year-old Tatania Igonina was fatally struck by an icicle that fell from a 14-story building, hitting her head. This happened right as she was stepping out of her home to take her dog for a walk in Novosibirsk, Siberia. Her mother and medical personnel rushed to the scene to help, and only narrowly escaped being hit by more blocks of ice. This incident was not isolated. It was part of a series of incidents involving falling icicles as the temperatures rose during the thawing season in Russia. Authorities were told to clear rooftops of any overhanging ice, but this did not prevent a string of injuries and close calls across various cities. Tributes were paid to Tatiana on Russian social media platforms. Described as an only child, Tatiana had recently returned from a vacation in Thailand and was content with her life. Her cousin, Vladimir Makhonen, expressed his grief on social media, remembering her laughter and smile. Tatiana, who had recently completed her university education, was in the process of searching for employment. Investigating the incident, authorities refrained from approaching her body until all remaining icicles were removed from the building. Despite efforts by public service officials to clear rooftops, a tragic oversight occurred. The owner of the building assumed responsibility for clearing a canopy of the property where the ice had formed, but unfortunately the task went uncompleted. Incidents involving falling ice have had fatal consequences in the past as well. In 2010, St. Petersburg experienced 5 deaths and 150 injuries due to icicles during an extremely cold winter. In Moscow, 9 years before the incident with Tatiana, 74 individuals fell victim to falling ice, including an 18-year-old who was fatally struck. Had Tatiana not left her home at the time, she might have still been alive. Number 7. Sunset gone wrong. On July 1st, 2019, an incident on the island of Mallorca led to the death of a young woman. The 24-year-old and her boyfriend had chosen a location between two well-known coves, Cala Vinyas and Cala Falco, to watch the sunset together. But the rock they were sitting on, which weighed half a ton, suddenly gave way. As they slipped off the rock, it rolled over and landed on the woman, causing her immediate death. Although the rock had crushed the legs of the woman's 25-year-old boyfriend, he managed to retrieve his phone from his pocket and called emergency services to provide their location. Rescuing the injured man and recovering the woman's body required the use of several hydraulic power tools. The incident was reported shortly before midnight, and the injured man was transported to San Esposés Hospital in Palma, the capital of Mallorca, around 2:45 a.m. for treatment of his leg injuries. The woman, originally from the Spanish mainland, had traveled to Mallorca to visit her boyfriend, who was working on the island for the summer. The area where the incident occurred has been cordoned off by police as part of a standard investigation procedure. Officials confirmed that the woman had lost her life instantly due to the impact of the falling rock, and the boyfriend's injuries were deemed serious. In the end, he survived the accident, but he could no longer use his legs effectively. Number 6. The fruits of kindness. On August 4th, 2016, 24-year-old Shanna Smith wrapped up her overnight shift at the Amazon warehouse in Union City. After her shift, she offered to give a co-worker a ride home in the southwest area of Atlanta. What Smith did not know was that Matthew Larkins, Travon Mack, Darian Sherry, Richard Ash, and Dion Fuller were waiting on Helldock Street. These people were connected to a gang in Clayton County, and just a day ago, one of their fellow gang members had been targeted by a rival gang and shot. Seeking vengeance, they lay in wait, intent on retaliating. Their focus was on finding a dark-colored BMW sedan. Coincidentally, Smith was driving exactly that type of car. After dropping off her co-worker, she began to leave the area when gunshots suddenly pierced the air. The sound was followed by Smith's vehicle ending up in a ditch. Detectives soon discovered Smith's lifeless body behind the wheel of her BMW. She had been fatally shot in the head. Investigative testimony unveiled a grim scene. A total of 43 shell casings were counted within Smith's car. These casings originated from several firearms, including 2 AR-15 rifles, a .380 caliber firearm, a 99mm gun, and a .25 caliber firearm. The prosecution strongly condemned the reckless and callous nature of the shooting, highlighting that an innocent person had tragically lost their life in an instance of violence fueled by gang conflicts. Detectives managed to link the crime to Fuller through his cell phone found at the crime scene. During the trial, Fuller provided information that implicated his fellow gang members. During the sentencing hearing, family members of Larkins and Mack pleaded for mercy, describing the two men as having gone astray but still capable of redemption. In contrast, prosecutors called for the maximum possible sentence, emphasizing the brutality and lack of regard for human life displayed by the perpetrators. Fuller testified on behalf of the state, with his case to be addressed later. During legal proceedings, Sherry was reported to be in a coma due to an unrelated accident. Ash's case resulted in a hung jury, and the Fulton County District Attorney's Office intended to retry him. A jury in Fulton County had recently convicted Larkins and Mack on various charges including murder, felony murder, participation in criminal street gang activity, as well as aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, first-degree criminal damage to property, possession of a firearm during a felony, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Larkins and Mack were each sentenced to life in prison, with an additional 25 years. Number 5. A drunken mistake. In June 2022, a warm and friendly man lost his life because of a violent attack. The attacker, Jonathan Adamson, who was heavily intoxicated, threw a single punch from behind that struck 59-year-old David Albert while they were in Manchester city centre's gay village. The events leading up to the tragedy started unfolding on June 1st, 2022. Adamson was spending time in Manchester with his girlfriend and 2 friends. Alcohol had clouded his judgment, leading him to falsely accuse his girlfriend of dancing too closely with other men during their bar-hopping evening. Albert, a single man with 3 brothers, had been enjoying his time at the Gafton Arms pub before making his way to the Eva bar in the gay village. It was around 4:15 a.m. when their paths crossed on the corner of Bloom Street and Sackville Street. Adamson had been having a heated argument with his girlfriend, who decided to sit down with her friend on a step. A few moments later, Albert walked past them and initiated a friendly conversation with the 2 women. Detectives clarified that there was no hostility nor negative intent in Albert's demeanor. That's when Adamson suddenly lunged at Albert from behind, delivering a powerful punch to the right back side of his head. He was entirely defenseless as the attack came from behind and he had no chance to protect himself. Doctors later explained that they believed Albert had likely become concussed or unconscious before he fell to the ground. A bartender at the Eva bar, who witnessed the incident, described the distressing sound of Albert's head hitting the pavement as sickening. At first, there were concerns that the impact may have been fatal due to its intensity. According to a witness's account, just minutes after the attack, Adamson suddenly became friendly. He warmly greeted his friend and even engaged in playful shadowboxing gestures, seemingly proud or amused by the incident. Witnesses noticed that he appeared to be pleased with his actions and did not fully comprehend the seriousness of the situation at that moment. After regaining consciousness, Albert was taken to Manchester Royal Infirmary by ambulance. But upon arriving, he refused medical treatment, despite the paramedics' warning that untreated head injuries could be life-threatening. After returning home at 5:30 a.m., he went to a shop at 7 a.m., shared a coffee with his neighbor, and spoke to his brother at 11 a.m. But he never left his home again. 6 days later, on June 8th, he was found dead after being reported missing. His demise was due to the head injury sustained during the punch by Adamson. The Greater Manchester City Police released CCTV images of a man they sought to speak with about Albert's death. Adamson's brother identified him in the images and confronted him. He denied any involvement with his mother, stating that he had not assaulted an older man. But he later admitted to his mother that he had punched someone who had been talking to his girlfriend. His mother, troubled by the situation, took him to the Ashton-under-Lyne police station, where he confessed to the assault. In court, a statement from one of Albert's brothers expressed the deep devastation caused by his untimely death. Throughout the court hearing, Adamson, who lives in Staley Bridge, Tameside, displayed remorse and shed tears. Albert was described as friendly and likable, someone who had not done anything wrong and was an entirely innocent victim. Adamson's lawyer portrayed the tragic event as a moment of madness from his client, something he could not comprehend and now regrets deeply. He emphasized that Adamson's remorse was sincere and immediate after realizing the gravity of his actions. The judge noted that Adamson's behavior was completely out of character, as he had no prior criminal record. The defense also highlighted Adamson's charitable work and willingness to help others. In the end, he was sentenced to 7 years and 4 months in prison after pleading guilty to manslaughter. Number 4. Bad navigation. In April 2023, a 20-year-old woman lost her life in upstate New York because of a mistaken location. Kaylin Gillis was traveling with 3 others in a car on Saturday night in Hebron, a rural town. The group took a wrong turn and ended up on the property of Kevin Monahan, a 65-year-old homeowner. Authorities shared the details during a press conference, explaining that as the group realized their mistake and was leaving Monahan's property, he got onto his porch and fired 2 shots. One of these shots struck the vehicle that Kaylin was in, leading to her tragic death. The group then managed to reach the nearby town of Salem, which is approximately 50 miles northeast of Albany and close to the Vermont state line. They promptly dialed 911 for help. Despite the efforts of the emergency responders who performed CPR, Kaylin was pronounced dead at the scene. After the incident, law enforcement arrested Monahan, charging him with second-degree murder. It's unclear if he had legal representation at this time. Sheriff Murphy expressed his condolences, stating that this was a profoundly sorrowful case involving young adults simply trying to find a friend's house. The tragic events unfolded when they mistakenly entered Monahan's property, who responded by coming out with a firearm and shooting. When officers got to Monahan's residence for investigation, he was uncooperative and refused to leave. Authorities engaged in communication with him through a 911 dispatcher and in person for over an hour before taking him into custody. Monahan was booked into the Warren County Jail and is expected to face court proceedings. Sheriff Murphy emphasized that the location of the incident was quite rural with limited cell phone service, making it easy to become disorientated. He clarified that the group had only been in Monahan's driveway briefly before realizing their mistake. The sheriff emphasized that there was no threat posed by anyone in the vehicle and no valid reason for Monahan to have felt threatened. No more details have been revealed by the police about the trial as of yet. Do you think the house owner should be considered guilty? Let us know in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 3. Too much weight. On July 15, 2023, an accident took the life of a fitness influencer as he attempted to squat press an immense weight of 210 kilograms. 33-year-old Justin Vicky was engaged in strength training at the Paradise Bali gym in Sanur when he got into the accident. Justin was trying to execute a squat press while carrying a heavy barbell on his shoulders. However, he encountered difficulties in maintaining an upright position. A spotter present behind him was unable to prevent the accident as Justin lost control and fell to the ground. The heavy barbell crushed onto the back of his neck. Known for his roles as a bodybuilder, nutritional advisor, and personal trainer, Justin had amassed a following of 30,000 on Instagram. After the accident, Justin was immediately taken to a nearby hospital. He had suffered a broken neck and critical compression of essential nerves linked to his heart and lungs because of the mishap. Medical professionals performed emergency surgery to address his injuries, but despite their best efforts, Justin passed away shortly after the procedure. Had the spotter been able to support the weight, Justin might have survived the accident, but he succumbed to his terrible injuries and passed away. Number 2. An unprovoked crime. On May 18, 2019, a man from Cumberland County fired a handgun at a car with 3 young men. One of them died due to the incident. At around 11 p.m. on the day, Millville police responded to reports of gunfire and a shooting at the intersection of Dock and Broad Streets. 19-year-old Maurice Lewis was found in the driver's seat of an SUV with a gunshot wound to the back of his head. Despite being rushed to Cooper University Hospital in Camden, he succumbed to his injuries on May 20th. 37-year-old Terrell Savage, a resident of Millville, was arrested on May 22nd. The investigation revealed that Lewis, accompanied by 2 male passengers, had stopped at a stop sign on Dock and Broad Streets around 11:05 p.m. Savage, who had been walking on Dock Street, positioned himself on the driver's side of the SUV. As Lewis began to drive away, Savage fired 10 rounds from a 9mm pistol equipped with a 14-round magazine. One of the bullets fatally struck Lewis, and while the SUV crashed into a parked car, the other passengers in the vehicle were unharmed. The investigation indicated that the attack was unprovoked. Savage faced a first-degree murder charge, along with attempted murder charges related to the other occupants of the vehicle. He was also charged with unlawful possession of a weapon, possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, possession of a weapon as a convicted felon, hindering apprehension or prosecution, and tampering with physical evidence. In a court hearing on February 21, 2023, Savage entered a guilty plea to first-degree manslaughter. In exchange for this plea agreement, which ensured Savage a state prison term with over 18 years of parole ineligibility, the remaining charges against him were dismissed. The sentence, as delivered by the Superior Court judge in Cumberland County, mandates that Savage serves 85% of his prison term, which amounts to over 18 years without the possibility of parole. The sentence is in addition to a separate 15-year prison term that Savage has been serving since June 11, 2018 for an unrelated firearms offense. Number 1. A justified attack. On April 6, 2023, an 18-year-old lost his life in a Brooklyn subway train heading toward the Barclays Center. The victim, Isaiah Collazo, was aboard a Manhattan-bound D train passing through downtown Brooklyn when a dispute erupted between him and his assailant around 11:30 p.m. Isaiah and a friend were messing around and pulled the emergency brake, which caused the aggressor to pull out a knife. The disagreement escalated into a physical fight, and Isaiah was stabbed in the stomach. The confrontation continued until the train arrived at the Atlantic Avenue Barclays Center station, at which point the fight spilled out onto the platform as recounted by witnesses. The attacker managed to flee the scene. Within minutes, emergency responders flooded the area, finding Isaiah seriously wounded on the platform due to the stabbing. Ahmed, who works at a deli opposite the entrance of the transit hub at 4th Avenue and Pacific Street, shared that there were police everywhere. Isaiah was rushed by EMS to New York Presbyterian Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, but despite their efforts, his life could not be saved. Although each of them was accompanied by 2 or 3 friends on the train, no one else intervened in the altercation. In May 2023, an arrest was made, and 25-year-old Mark Smith was named the culprit in the crime, but a grand jury decided to clear the charges after finding out that he had acted in self-defense. Carlos Collazo, Isaiah's father, was confused about the entire situation, mentioning that his son did not deserve what happened to him. According to the witnesses, one of Isaiah's friends pulled the emergency brake, causing the train to stop, and this led to the argument with Mark. A physical fight ensued, during which Mark produced a sharp object and stabbed Isaiah. Mark fled the scene but turned himself in a few days later. He faced charges of manslaughter, assault, and criminal possession of a weapon. But a few days later, a grand jury had ruled that Mark's actions were justified, leading to the dismissal of the case. Sources indicated that a witness on the train, unrelated to either group involved, testified that the teenagers were the instigators and had attacked Mark. It was also mentioned that racial slurs had been used by the teenagers, which triggered Mark's reaction. Carlos remembered his son as someone who loved basketball and boxing, but mostly enjoyed staying at home and playing video games. He described his son as non-aggressive. In the end, Mark walked out a free man and faced no consequences. Which of these crimes was the worst coincidence in your eyes? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Bad Badger.